But the real stars of the show came here from the assessor's office to help us understand what they are seeing, because it's different. It's you've got the insider scoop. I thank you for being here. So we have Anne, Ron, and Donato, and I don't know if you guys want to, how you want to do it, but the floor is yours.
You can go first.
Okay. And do you want to stand and come up here and do the thing? Okay, great. Okay, Leslie, I need to stop screen share and I can do this with this little button right here. Okay,
Fancy slide, so.
that's all right. We're not gonna do any. And then do I need to, let me just think for a second. Which is located in the top right. And do speaker. Speaker?
Ma'am.
All right.
Wait.
Yeah, kind of not, but that's okay. We're gonna run with it, because we're not using the screen really. So I can
You could just go back to your.
do that. Bam. Donato,
All right. Thank you guys for having us.
will you remind us your position, your title, all that good stuff?
I am a residential appraiser. Been there for about 10 years. Residential appraiser, just like Ann. And I just cover, I'm actually here because I handle not the majority of the multifamilies. I just do a spreadsheet every year that handles the averages and kind of the data behind it. That's why I'm here. But
Okay.
otherwise, we have about 20 residential appraisers that,
And also, will you stand just a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
back, just because these guys.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
Thank you.
There's about 20, sorry, there's about 20 residential appraisers, and each one of those appraisers cover their own area, including the multifamilies in their respective areas. So I'm gonna get right into it. Based on the slides that I saw from Stacy, we're about the same. I mean, we're on the same page here. I'm gonna cover the residential single-family dwellings, just a quick brush over, and then I'll move to the multifamilies. Expectations for this year on the single families, the countywide trend is gonna be, we're gonna go up on those guys. The time adjustment is gonna be about 0.25% per month. And the high-end properties are gonna lead the way with a little bit of higher increases for the single family. Some of those, you're gonna be surprised, might be in the double digits in certain areas. And that's based on sales that just might have not been there prior in prior years. So appraisers are gonna have to benchmark to those sales and increase the assessments. We've had quite a few high sales this year, a few in the $5-6 million range. And I actually spoke with the Eagle appraiser. She has more of those high-end sales over $1 million. And she's seen $2 to $3 million sales range actually be more prevalent this year. 2023 saw a 15% reduction in total sales. And actually, I pull up cash sales just out of curiosity. I do it every year, kind of see what's going on. 15% reduction in total reported sales, but cash sales actually went up 2% as of 2023. Of those cash sales, 13.5% were over $1 million. Last year, we had 12% of those cash sales being over $1 million. That's all the information I have for single families. I'm going to move to multifamilies. Last year, we occupied 25 duplexes, 2 triplexes, and 41 fourplexes. That's 68 total buildings or 220 units.
You occupied?
Occupied, physically occupied, put on the roll.
Oh,
They went on the tax roll. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
New construction that actually was put on the tax roll.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
68 units last
68
year.
units, 220 units, 68 buildings. 25,
68 buildings.
yep, 20,
220 units. I'm just gonna like underscore this,
Yeah.
because we've been really wondering
Yeah.
about this.
and that was 25 duplexes, 2 triplexes, and 41 fourplexes. This year so far, based on the permits that I saw that are being worked by the appraisers, so far we have 11 duplexes, 1 triplex, and 3 fourplexes under construction. The numbers could be a little bit higher. We have to wait for the appraisers to work those permits into the system and classify them as multifamilies. But this is the numbers I saw when I was putting the presentation together.
And how many units was that?
So that's, let's see, 11 duplexes, so 22, one triplex, that's 25, and 3 fourplexes, 12. So that's 37. These are new construction multifamily, new construction.
What I'm seeing, there's nothing under. I mean, the walls are four, no more like floors. When I'm talking about multi,
Yeah, so residential multifamily, 4 units or below, fourplexes, triplexes, and duplexes. I think what you're referring to is what Ron covers, the commercial side. It's anything above 5 or more units, and that's gonna fall under commercial. Yeah, there's a quadrillion of those. I mean, wherever you look, they're popping up like mushrooms, so. But as far as residential, 4 units and below, it was just it's so far 11 duplexes, 1 triplex, and 3 fourplexes. The data set for this year, for 2023, that we're using to assess the multifamilies on the residential side actually decreased 30%. Last year, the data set was about 186 sales. We're down to 129. So I think you mentioned there's less sales going on. And we actually include fourth quarter of 2022 and first quarter of 2024. And we do that to bracket the calendar year to see where these properties are heading, get a better idea. Countywide, multifamilies are trending downward, so you're gonna see some adjustments, actually down for the majority of these multifamilies. That's for duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes for the most part. There is going to be some areas like Cuna, Garden City, and Eagle. In these areas, you don't see a lot of sales that happen very often, so the appraisers for those areas are gonna have to benchmark those sales as they see fit. I haven't seen the numbers yet. They're working on them as we're speaking here, but I'm going to assume it's going to be a bit different of a trending compared to the rest of the county. Let's see. I have year-over-year rents seem to be pretty stable. I think you guys mentioned the same thing. It went up a little bit, but I saw pretty flat rents year over year. They did peak in the summer months and then went back to that first quarter, second quarter levels for 2023. Out of those rents, we calculated some GRMs. Boise City had most of the multifamily sales. Duplex average sale was about 575 with a median GRM of 208. And I hate being absolute on these because there's always a range depending on location, age, and conditions. So the range for these duplexes in Boise are between 180 and 260. Pretty big range.
Per door.
Total. So 180 GRM per
GRM.
total. Yeah. Triplexes, median of 180 with a range between 165 and 195. Average selling price of 757. And fourplexes, average selling price of 875,000 with a median of 177 for GRM, and a range of 160 to 220.
And you said you are seeing these.
We're
jumping
seeing
down.
these downtrending a little bit for this year. Again, in those areas that saw high increases last year, you're gonna see a bit more decreasing. And then you have parts like Cuna, which stands on its own. It doesn't receive a lot of sales. So the appraisers tend to have to benchmark to those a little bit more this year. You might see some increases in areas like Cuna.
what was that, fourplex at 375?
The fourplex was a 875 average, with a median GRM of 177 and a range of 160 to 220. And this is for the whole spectrum. So you're talking about overall. I don't want to get too picky on the sizes and stuff. So this is that's why I want to give out the range, kind of have an idea, you know.
So would that include new builds, new construction, or just?
This includes all the sales, which does have some new builds. Meridian had most of the new builds for last year. As a matter of fact, I was going to say that next. Meridian had fewer sales, but they're all new construction, so built between 2021 and 2023.
Yeah, so Just trying to understand what percentage of the fourplex sales were new build versus.
I didn't calculate that. I guess I could do that real quick while Ron talks. I have all the sales that we included here. It doesn't look like to be very many. I see some 2021 bills, some 2022, some 2023s, but percentage wise of total sales, it's not gonna be very much.
Because I thought you said you had 40 fourplexes come on the tax roll for 2024.
So-
Bills.
So that doesn't mean they sold. It didn't mean that we actually get the sales. We occupied them, because they were occupied as of last year. It doesn't mean we received the sale. So we can occupy a multifamily, and as a matter of fact, we can occupy a single family house without actually having it sell.
And when
Or
you
just-
say occupy, you must mean change it from being like raw
New
land. to
construction
being-
to going on the tax roll. Basically, when we say occupy, it means that we are seeing, physically being occupied, used as a property, and we have to put it on the tax roll, which, that reminds me, when we occupy a property, if you're using it as a storage for any personal property, by state statutes, that's actually occupied. So it just becomes a very expensive storage unit. I tell that to folks all the time, is that don't move a bed in there, because by state statute, it is basically occupied the second you move personal property. So if you have to occupy, just move in or just wait till you have to, otherwise it gets.
You see, you put it on the tax roll.
Right.
Even if it isn't sold or occupied.
So it could sell, we just don't have the sale. It could
If it
physically,
didn't sell, but it's on a roll
right.
and no one's living in it, you still call it occupied?
If nobody's living in it, but it is as personal property in it, it is occupied, yeah, yeah. And that's by state statutes, that's how, it's written out. I believe it has that,
The improvement part of if you have a dirt lot, the dirt lot's always gonna be, on the tax rolls as a dirt lot. Once you start construction in residential, different from commercial, but residential construction, so fourplex or less, is only gonna be assessed as raw land until it's occupied. So back in 2007, 2008, when we had the crash, we literally had completed houses in subdivisions sitting there for years that were not on the tax rolls because they were never actually occupied. They were just vacant, empty houses.
right,
So until there's personal belongings in there or it's occupied by
Basically, yeah.
somebody, then it gets added to the tax roll and it's added on a prorated basis for the rest of that year.
right,
You're just taxing the dirt.
Prior to that, yeah, it was just tax in the dirt, and then once it's occupied, so if it occupies on July 1st, you're gonna have an occupancy tax that's basically for half a year for the improvement part of it. Prorated.
obviously, it's non-disclosure state, so we don't get all the sales. A lot of these might sell, under the table, and we might never get a sale for it, but we still have to occupy them, they have to go on the tax roll.
Well, like you were saying, with the fourplexes, a good example would be, that the fourplex, apartment community there, that's just south of Hobby Lobby on Eagle Road. Brickyard, I think that's what it's called. Those are all individual parcels with fourplexes on them for the most part, there's a couple that aren't, but. So the developer came in and built those and then rents them out, and so there's not any sales on those. They're just occupied fourplexes.
Right, I mean, Corey Barton does the same, I mean. he
Are
builds
you
them out.
seeing an increase in that trend for developers to just hold them instead of selling them?
Yeah, honestly, on the apartment side, I am.
Mhm.
I don't know about.
Cause I know Hubble's doing some of that as well, and
Meridian only had a few sales, like we said, they were mostly brand new, 2021, 2023 build. They were all above, both the duplexes and fourplexes were all above 3,000 square feet. The median GRM for those guys, the duplexes in Meridian was 160 with a range between 156 and 167 and an average sale price of 660. Fourplexes, again, 3,300 square feet and above, median GRM of 187 with a range of 158 to 287, and an average sale price of 904. $904,000. Just to give you guys a timeline, as we're speaking here, the residential appraisers and commercial are still going through and trending all their properties. That process goes all the way through first week of May, and then the assessments are certified second week of May. And we have an expected mail out date for those assessments on Memorial Day weekend, the last week of May. The second those assessments are mailed out, the timer starts and the appeal process. For any of you who ever participated in that, you have till until the fourth Monday in June. And the thing that I want to put out there is if you do have issues with assessment values or anything, just call your appraiser. Do it sooner than later. It gets pretty busy into the second, third week of the season. So if there's any issues, give us a call. 90% of the times we're able to solve any issues that we may have with properties right there and then on the phone. So we avoid lengthy procedures and everything. However, there are some that go to the Board of Equalization and further to BTA and so, and if we have to go that route, you know, it's just the way it has to be. That's all I have.
Do you have a downward adjustment percentage for multifamily?
So multifamilies, we're looking at a flat, so 0 year over year. We are, however, adjusting those down. Just know we're not adjusting the actual sales. So the assessment from last year will be benchmarked to this year's sales, but we're not going to use any time adjustments of the actual sales. So it's going to be we're going to use pure sales to benchmark it. They're already within that 10% benchmark that we get from the state that allows us. So we don't want to go any further than that. And like I said, we're always benchmarking to the sales available. So if there are sales in areas that haven't seen sales in a while, chances are that those appraisers will have to benchmark those sales, and they might see some increases depending how low they were last year, their assessments. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the AUD, is that what it is?
ADUs?
Yeah, AUD. So a person gets a permit, and then how do you come up with the value?
So a lot of those, I'm seeing a ton of those in Boise, actually. It's getting out of control how many we're getting. Value wise, we base it the first year is based on the cost approach. So we gather the characteristics, and a lot of the times we'll reach out to the homeowner to come and do an inspection. Otherwise, we gather the information from permits mostly. And it's the first year it's on the cost approach. After the first year is based on comparable sales that we get with ADUs. So if we receive a sale of a property that has an ADU, we'll kind of extrapolate that value out of the total sale of the house. You know, depending how old that ADU is, because we have some properties that have converted old garages into ADUs, you know, but I am seeing a lot of brand new construction ADUs, and I believe under 700 square feet. I think it's so it's the maximum is 700 square feet, and you can have a similar size garage below. So 700 square feet.
They just increased it to 900 square feet.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's good to know.
But you
Some,
They increased the square footage to 900. Or an AUD from 700.
That is correct. That's under.
that's a whole other house.
Zoning
You know, a lot, yeah.
You still have to live on the property.
I don't believe so.
Oh,
They changed that as well, didn't they?
oh, you know this stuff is.
They can have everything rented.
It is a
You can have everything rented, the main house rented, the ADU.
Yeah, I believe you can. There's no longer an occupancy requirement, I believe, as part of the ADU requirements. Also, Tushar was just asking if it's a rule change. Yeah, they just changed the city code on ADUs, and I believe it went up from 700 to 900, as Leslie was saying. And Boise,
Just Boise.
just Boise?
Just Boise, as far as
I think just Boise.
just Boise, yeah, I think there's a.
We saw a lot now.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah, and it's all new, so we're trying to keep up with these, so that's why you see us exchanging looks, because we're all afraid to 13 rentals, like, I think I heard that, but it was kind of on the books, and then it was a maybe, and then a maybe not. Dave, do you have any corrections to make on what we're saying?
Regarding the
ADUs and stuff, yeah,
That is
and
correct.
the occupancy,
Pardon me?
I think you don't have to owner occupy it anymore, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just a note on ADUs, for anybody here is planning on building one, or if you guys know anybody. If the ADU is detached, we value it separately from the main house. If the ADU is constructed, attached to the main property, but it has separate entrances, it is technically considered, it'll go on the roll as a duplex. So it'll be valued as a duplex, depending how big the house is. Now, if the house is 5,000 square feet and you have an ADU that's, 700 or 900 square feet, then it might still be considered technically an ADU or mother-in-law quarters. But if the size of that property and the size of the ADU is technically getting pretty even, pretty close, it's gonna be classified as a duplex with separate entrances.
Can you repeat that last point, please? What is the difference between separate unit and a duplex?
So if the ADU is attached to your main property, you're planning on adding on to your main property and has separate
What does
entrances,
attached mean?
it has to have a common wall.
Common wall.
Yep, it becomes a duplex.
And the common wall has to be an indoor wall.
It doesn't have to be an indoor wall. It could be a garage. So, right.
Or it could be a hallway.
As long as there's no access between the main property and so if you have a door
Is
that
there
opens
an
and closes.
advantage or disadvantage?
That's a good question. It depends how big or how fancy your ADU is.
Mhm.
So we value duplexes based on sales for duplexes. Your single family dwellings with ADUs get trended with single families. So if you have a duplex, it tends to get isolated away from single families. So I want to say it's better to have a house with an ADU because it will just get trended alongside with your neighborhood.
Although the average duplex you reported, the median duplex was 575,000 in Boise. And the houses I'm picturing with ADUs oftentimes are worth more than that because the median price of homes in Boise is already 550. Throw an ADU on that, you're at least at 650. So applying your numbers, I see where I'm going.
No, I see where you're going. That's a good point. Again, it depends on the size of the ADU, because I've seen ADUs that have those garages at the bottom, and we're valuing them up to $180,000. So in that case, yes. I've seen ADUs for those manufactured homes that get placed on the lot or shipping containers,
Yeah,
super cheap. So some of those are valued between $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. That won't add up to much value to your total property.
mhm.
So, but you're right, you're not seeing very many houses around the $500,000 mark. So even if the second you add $75,000 ADU, you're over that median value for the duplexes. Yep.
Okay, I have a specific case to discuss, so I don't know, because then I will need to draw and
Right.
things like that. So I have a friend's property here in Boise, which I want to go deep into, based on these discussions. So,
Okay.
yeah, you can let me know when it's a good time.
Well, let's
We
do it in the queue. Well, what do you think?
I mean, if it's specific to you and you want to talk about it, we can do it after. I mean, it's entirely, yeah.
We have to whiteboard.
Okay,
Let's go through this and then include that in the Q&A. Okay,
sounds good.
yeah. Because we gotta stay in data mode and hear what Ron has to say and how many questions we have on that too, so. And Ann,
It's your turn.
Well, then,
Yeah, yeah. Unless anybody has questions.
Well, I'll have one for you later.
Okay,
okay,
sounds
we'll
good.
do questions later.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you, Donato.
Yeah.
Should we clap now or later? Well, let's just clap. Yes.
Hello, my name is Ron DeRoost. For those that haven't met me before, I've been here last 3 years, I think it is. Been a while. I am the commercial appraiser that's in charge of multifamily at Ada County. So anything that's 5 units or more is considered commercial. And then there are a few projects that are run as apartments, but they're individually owned, kind of a weird deal. A lot of times I'll value those for the residential appraisers. And if somebody calls on the value, then they'll usually just send it to me and I'll answer the questions on how they got to that. We also did bring in Ann Killenstad tonight. She is what we call a hybrid appraiser, where she does mostly residential work, but she is kind of interested in learning about commercial. So we give her a small property type or group and kind of teach her how to do that. And so she's doing that this year. And she has taken on the north end small apartments. So anything between 5 units and 19 units that's in the north end, she is going to be handling those this year. So she has gone out and oddly enough, small apartments, both in the north end and all of Ada County, so 5 units to 19 units, are all up for reappraisal this year. So between Ann doing the north end and me doing the rest of the county, we have visited every single small apartment complex out there and taken updated photos of the outside and made any kind of notes that we might have noticed. And we also sent out a survey this year. Did anybody get my survey?
I heard of someone who did. Someone just said that they got a survey.
All right, good.
And it was
So we sent out surveys in January and had a great response back, honestly, from the property owners. We got about 20% of them back, which is pretty good being in a non-disclosure state. And we asked some tough questions, you know, how much you're making, what your expenses are, those kinds of things, and then some other just generic characteristics questions as well. It really is great to get those responses back in tracking specifically the unit mix on all the properties. We had quite a few errors where we thought there were 2-bedroom, 1 baths. Maybe they were 2-bedroom, 1.5 baths, or maybe it was all 1-bedroom, 1 baths. And there were some discrepancies in there. From time to time, we do get calls where we think the property is a 9-unit property and it ends up being an 8-unit property. From time to time, especially in the north end and some of the older properties. The north end has a lot of properties that were originally built as houses that they've been converted over the years to apartments. And sometimes those get reconfigured over the years as well. And so we have to make some adjustments on that stuff. So it's never a bad idea to give us a call and just verify the characteristics, or you can go online most of the times, and there's a characteristics section on our website that you can check as well. So multifamily, it's been a rough year. a lot of stuff going on. The sales of multifamily, though, has been pretty slow this year. As you remember, last year, we had a record year for multifamily sales. This year has been very, very slow. There's only been about 10 sales over the last year for multifamily properties. Most of that has to do with the interest rates. Interest rates are so high that people don't want to sell and they don't want to buy.
When you say record year, are you looking as?
2022 was a record year.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. 2023 was very slow.
Mhm.
So keep in mind, when we're talking about our numbers, we're looking at generally January 1st to January 1st of each year. And when we're assessing properties, we're looking at the data from the prior year. So, which is good for you guys this year because it was, you know, like Donato said, values are down a little bit for 2023. Although for 2024, they're starting to pick up. And you mentioned sales and values and stuff going up, and we're seeing that as well in the commercial market. But As of January first, they were still down a little bit, so, the numbers will be favorable, I think, for the most part, assessment wise, for most properties. Overall, commercial sales were down 60% from last year, and it's considered the slowest volume in over 8 years for commercial sales in all of Ada County. Like I said, we got reappraisal this year. On top of the surveys, Ann and I both went out and gathered additional data as well for the 5 to 19 unit market. There's only about 250 properties that make up that group of apartment complexes in Ada County, and we've got data on about half of them. So the rental market data is really solid this year. I did ask for expense data in the survey, and most people complied and gave me some stuff, but they didn't fully understand what I was asking. So some of it's not great, but I think overall, between that and the numbers that I get from other folks, we've got pretty good numbers on expenses as well. So what did we learn on the reappraisal survey and the reappraisal data we found? Ultimately, rents have stabilized. There are about 36% of the properties are offering concessions right now on the commercial apartments. Ultimately, properties priced in the upper range of the rent market have higher vacancy, and the ones that are in the lower prices have less vacancy. A lot of people responded that had 0 vacancy last year, and they were all in the lower tier on the asking rents, and that's just seems not logical.
What's the break off between your lower and higher rental?
Well, I'll get to the rents. I've got a lot of data on that, and I'll share that in a little bit. Vacancy did go up quite a bit this year. We were looking at near 0 last year this time, or on January 1st of last year, and we're somewhere between 5 and 6%. We're going to use a 5% market vacancy though this year. Vacancy is one of those things that it's not on January 1st, whatever the vacancy is, we're going to use it. It's more of a long-term number. Operating expenses have also stabilized. The cap rate for multifamily in the Boise market has risen quite a bit. As of January 1st, based on the sales that I have, as well as some of the big players in the market like TOK, CBRE, they're showing that the cap rate was about 5.3%. That's a fairly large increase. Last year, we were at 4.5%, so that's an 80 basis points increase in cap rate. Older properties, and 5.3 is going to be the best property, the nicest, newest, shiniest property. As properties get older, they're a little more risky, so they're going to have a little bit higher cap rate. So we're looking at cap rates between 5.3% and about 6%, maybe a little bit higher on the really, really old, bad properties.
And where do you put the north end in that? Because I noticed you gave Ann the New Gal the hardest neighborhood to value because it's old stuff, but it's highly desirable and near downtown.
Well, so Ann's rents did come in a little higher than most of the other rents. Not much higher, honestly, though.
Okay,
But they're gonna have higher cap rates
okay.
on those properties than, you know, the new stuff in Meridian or Stark, you know, those type of things.
So what do you think for a north end 8 bucks? A north end, the cap rate of a north end 8 bucks with, 8 units, older, obviously.
It's gonna be 6, 6.25.
So
Unless
like that
it's,
one I showed on the board, you're thinking would be up at 6.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Unless it's a really, really rundown place, and there's probably only a dozen of those in all of Ada County, you're not gonna get anything. 6.25 is Right, the max you're gonna see, unless it's really bad.
Mhm. And does that cap rate, is that your special cap rate that doesn't include tax?
No, well, that's correct. That is the non-tax loaded cap rate. So what we do when we're figuring in expenses, we do not include taxes in the expenses. So say that average expenses being about $3,000 per unit, that does not include taxes. But what we do is we take that cap rate that say is 6%, and then we add the tax rate or the levy rate to that to get the value of the property. So we're figuring the taxes in on a different way. And that's pretty standard in assessment. Because we're trying to get to that tax value.
Yes, you can't use the value. you're
Right.
trying to calculate
You're just gonna get into a circular
Yeah.
calculation, so. So nationally, the cap rate is about 6%. Our cap rate for the minimum, the low end cap rate. So our cap rates here in Idaho are quite a bit better than most places. We're just a very desirable market. I think we're still in a time where if you look at what it was considered a healthy ratio between apartments and single family residences, we're probably still a little low on apartments overall, even though it doesn't seem like it based on the construction out there. So people still like to invest here in Idaho in apartments. Multifamily in general has a little bit lower cap rate than other properties types as well. So multifamily is going to have a lower cap rate than offices, industrial, retail, those kinds of things, which basically means that multifamily is the least risky of the commercial investments out there, which is why you guys are all invested in real estate. Overall, what all these numbers mean, apartment values have stabilized. Smaller properties are seeing a slight decrease in value overall of about 5 to 6%. This is similar to the differences that Donato talked about in the 2 to 4 unit residential properties as well. Some properties will be flat, just based on updated rents, those kinds of things that we're seeing. And some may go up a little bit. I've seen a handful of properties that have been older properties that have been renovated, and the asking rents have gone up tremendously from what we had during the last reappraisal cycle. So that's what reappraisal does. It's basically kind of a reset. We have to reappraise properties at least once every 5 years. The last time these properties were reappraised was in 2021. However, normally we would have waited to 2026 to reappraise them, but the other categories of apartments have increased the units and parcel count so much that I had to readjust so that I can equally distribute my reappraisal load each year. So these types of properties, student housing, horticulture, the other things that I reappraise, all got kind of moved into this year and free up the overloaded other years. That's going to happen in 2026. Larger properties, things that are over 20 units, they are probably going to see a little bit larger decrease, somewhere around 10% for the most part. Last year, I talked a little bit about census data and how many people are moving to the valley. And anybody have any guesses as to how big the county grew last year? Ada County? 1 year. How many new people moved here?
10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2%.
Oh, no.
5%,
1%,
1%. That's good.
which is about 5,669 people.
1%, 5,000 what?
5,669 people,
Is that
So-
in Boise or is that?
Ada County,
Val? Okay.
Ada County.
Now, I remember an economic forum that I did, and they were talking about the number of units coming on and population growth. And they were saying our growth was this, but it needed to be 2 to 3 to absorb all the units.
Yeah.
So where,
I'm getting to that.
okay, sorry, I will sit with you.
Jump ahead.
How many,
5,669 people.
they're all driving in my block.
I was gonna say.
We must be neighbors. Last year, we had about 6,000 people move to Ada County. And then the previous year in 2021 had almost 18,000. So 2021 was a huge year for, well, and 2020 as well. We had 13,000 in 2020 and 17,000 in 2021. So that's 30,000 people in 2 years. And then the last 2 years, it's only been about 6,000 each year. So the growth is slowing down a lot. This comes from the census.
So they do, how do they conduct? I mean, they don't go to the.
They don't give me information as to how they get the numbers, unfortunately.
They do American Community Surveys,
Oh,
so they actually do surveys all the time, not just every decade.
Yeah, they do. I don't know how exactly they get it, and I don't know how accurate the numbers are.
They're pretty
But
accurate.
they are pretty decent, because if you go back and look at when they do the census every 10 years, the adjustments there aren't generally terrible. I think in 2000 or 1990, it was a pretty significant jump that previous data was not right, obviously, but the last 20, 30 years, I think we've been pretty good. All right, moving forward. Apartment pipeline. So currently, we have 45 commercial multifamily projects that are permitted and under construction that total 5,563 units. That's a lot, right? Well, that doesn't,
Right.
and I'll get into the single family residence as well, because we got a lot of permits going on there too.
Well, that's an Ada County.
That's Ada County. There are an additional 24,091 apartment units in the pipeline from proposed to approved without permits. So that's a very wide, vast range. Some of them won't ever get built. Right, a lot of them won't get built. When the projects get proposed, it's just an idea, go through a lot of process. Sometimes they get backed out. There was a project I was just reading about today on Boise Dev. That's a great online news source regarding development here in the Boise area. They were talking about the Catholic Diocese building a new office in the north end there on a vacant lot. Now, currently though, it's approved for multifamily. So that's those units that it's already approved for are in that 24,000 thing. Now, they're trying to change it and make it an office now. The city shut them down, but
Is that off of Fort Street or?
yes, 8th and 4th, I think, yeah, 8th and 4th Street, and sort of is. So there are a lot of projects out there that are in that 24,000 group that may never get built. But it is something that people track.
Will include the 16th and State project that has a fence around it, and it's been no activity.
Are you referring to the gas station?
Yeah,
Okay, so that permit just got issued. So yeah, that number is, yes, in that 24,000. It's not for the 5,563 that are currently done, because that is it hasn't even hit my, it hasn't started yet, so.
no, it has been started.
Yeah,
for-
the permit has been issued though, so they've paid for the permit and they can build any day.
Oh, okay.
How many units?
102 units is that project. I have no idea how they're gonna get 102 units on 5 stories on a 0.3 acre lot. I have no idea how they're gonna do that. Yeah, I don't have any idea. I'll be interested to look at the blueprints once they get there. It's crazy. To give you an idea, we had about 9,000 apartment units in the pipeline in 2021. So 2022,
in 2023 jumped up a lot. And I think that a lot of that had to do with how many people were moving here. A lot of the developers saw that and said, we got to build some apartments. So they started that process. For residential building permits, we're up about 12% over 2022, which total 3,626 single-family permits. It's still down slightly from 2021 that had just under 5,000 permits. There are also 4,340 reported lots and just shy of 30,000 lots in process. So lots in process, again, is going to be anywhere from entitlement to approved to final plat to recorded lot. It's very wide range that takes several years to get from point A to point B. While it may seem like we are going to have an abundance of housing in the near future, based on the reduced number of people moving into Idaho, there's still a lot of factors to consider. Micron has some expansion that they're doing. They've already started that construction of those projects out at their campus, which is going to bring a lot of employees to Ada County. It's the jobs that they are creating there are not necessarily going to be jobs that are for people that are already here. There's going to be a lot of out-of-state high-tech job folks coming in for that. There's actually a lot of increased vacation rentals as well. There's a lot of Airbnbs out there, and I don't know if any of you guys work in that market at all, but they seem to be pretty busy. I know I've got one in my neighborhood that it seems like there's somebody there every week.
Seems like they've taken a little bit of a hit.
Have they? We're also seeing some condo conversions. Basically what that is where you've got an apartment complex, maybe it's 8 units or 10 units or however many units, it doesn't really matter. But then you go through the condo plat process and turn it into condos instead of apartments. So you can individually sell them if you wanted to. There's been a lot of that happening in new construction as well as existing properties as well. Generally speaking, if it's an apartment, it's probably going to be valued a little lower than if it's an individually sold unit. The individually sold units tend to sell for quite a bit more than an apartment unit. So you do have to go through that condo plat process, which going through the city, and that process is pretty extensive, but there are people out there doing it. For rents, the rental data came in on the low end, and I think that some of these rents are maybe not honest, or maybe they're people that have been there for a long time, even though when I worded my survey in such a way that, you know, if you had a vacancy on January 1st, what would you ask for rent? A lot of people, in fact, most people, I think, gave me their actual rents, which can be a lot different. And you've got people that have been there for a long time. We do have a lot of property owners that try to help people out, because there's a lot of low income out there, and which is it's great. It's hard for me as an appraiser at the county because state law says that I have to value properties using market rents, market expenses, market cap rate, market vacancy, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes when you have a property owner that is renting below market, their value is going to be as if they're renting at market, as far as the assessor is concerned. And unfortunately, there's no law that I can't adjust the value of my assessment because you're renting below market. So it does. I know it's frustrating for the property owners that do that. It's rough on me too. I wish I could do those adjustments, but I just can't. Anyway, so rental rates, Studios, on the low end, around 600. Is what people said. Realistically, the very lowest of the low is really about 800. And that's gonna be very small, not nice, rundown, old, no AC, baseboard heat maybe, type place. Little better, and then it kind of goes up from there, to around 900 to 1,000 for just kind of a lower quality average type studio. And then newer but not luxury, you're looking in the 1,200, 1,250 range, and then nicer, you're getting into the 1,400 and even up to $1,600 for the higher end, very nice studios like downtown and nice buildings. One bedrooms, anywhere from 900 on the low end up to about 1,500 on the higher end. The really high end stuff, you're gonna give it higher, probably 1,700 for the super nice stuff, 1,800. For the 2 bedrooms, minimum 1,000, up to 1,700 to 2,000 on the super nice high end stuff. And then on the 3 bedrooms, you're looking at between 1,200 and then on the low end. And then on the high end, you're looking at 2,000 plus, probably 2,600 on the really nice stuff. On the A+ quality stuff. So averages though, you're looking at about $1,000, 1,100 for 1 bedroom, 1,300 for 2 bedroom, and 1,600 for 3 bedroom. Maybe a little higher. depending
And
on how
that's
nice it
commercial
is.
multifamily.
That's commercial multi. When we,
Did you tell us, by the way, did you tell us, this is kind of off, but how many units we added commercially in 2023?
yes, sorry. We completed 19 commercial projects for a total of 1,068 units.
1,068.
Yep. All right, I skipped over that. Thanks for calling. When Ann and I did our research, we looked at not just 5 to 19 units. We actually looked at duplex, triplex, and fourplex rental rates as well. We actually found that they were pretty much the same as the smaller apartment complexes. There was not really much discrepancy there. Generally, with the smaller apartment complexes, there really aren't any amenities. Some have washers and dryers in the unit. Some of them have them out of the unit. Some of them don't even have them on site. You have to go to laundromat. I was actually surprised to see that a lot of the properties that had laundry facilities on site, they actually was free. They didn't charge the tenants for that. But that was kind of interesting. I never really considered that to be an option. But, all right. So I touched on it a little bit. For commercial properties, we use the income approach to value, just like an investor would. We do it on a pro forma basis, not necessarily what your actuals are. So the pro forma net operating income is generally going to be higher than your trailing 12 months. Now, we also give vacancy. We're generally very generous on the expenses. We do include in the expenses of reserves that help pad that a little bit as well. And I'm usually somewhat conservative on the rents. I know sometimes people, depending on the property or the property owner, can get sometimes kind of aggressive on the rents. To give you an idea, So the last year we did the reappraisal was in 2021, so that was kind of the baseline. In 2022, we saw rent increases between 20 and 40%. And so when I made my adjustments for my my trending, I aimed on the low end and did a 20% PGI trend. The following year, last year, when rents were still going up 5 to 10%, I aimed low and went 5%. So this year, even though rents have come down a little bit, if you look at what my effective rent range is in our assessment system versus what people are actually getting, it's pretty flat, if not generous as well. So I could not, if I were to reduce my rent by 5% and reduce or increase the cap rate and all these things, it would have been a ridiculous reduction, and it just wouldn't be realistic. So when you get your assessment notice, create a quick pro forma and based on January 1st market rents. And if you feel your value is too high, maybe contact Stacy or reach out to some of your other investor groups or friends and talk to them, see what they think. See if you're crazy or not crazy. And if you still feel it's too high, give me a call right away. My phone number and Ann's phone number is at the top of the assessment notice. The email addresses are on there too. We'll be happy to talk you through it and how we get to those numbers. Generally speaking, if you don't like what we have to say, we're going to ask for generally the last 3 years of income and expense statements along with the January 1st rent roll, just so that we can compare what you're seeing versus what we have in our databases and the data we've collected. And if we're able to make an adjustment, we will. If we can't, we can't. But at that point, if you don't like what we have to say, you can still take it to the next level and appeal with the Board of Equalization. As Donato mentioned, you have till the 4th Monday in June to do that, which I believe this year is June 24th.
Is that for the formal appeal or the informal?
For the formal appeal. Well, for both, honestly. If you don't call me by June 24th, I can't help you. Preferably the first week of June is the best. I'm gonna give you guys a maybe common knowledge, maybe not common knowledge. The large investors, mostly out of state, multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars investors, the appeals process through different counties, not just Ada County, but nationwide, it's a game to them. And they are very good at it. And they do things that make our lives hell as appraisers. One of those being they wait to the absolute last minute to file appeals or to call. And at that point, we're overwhelmed and we can't, a lot of times can't do anything. And it's going to force you to actually have to file a formal appeal and go through the paperwork because I don't have time to help you. So it's really in your best interest and my best interest as well if you call earlier rather than later. And that's true, honestly, on the residential side as well. A little worse on the commercial side because we're talking about, big money investors from out of state, and they hire tax reps that's all they do is their sole job is to reduce tax bills for their clients. So the earlier you call, the better. Also, if you have any appraisals on it, if you recently purchased it or you're getting ready to refinance it or something, you have an appraisal on it, that's great information as well. Or even a BPO, if you happen to have that. That's it. Any questions?
What was a mix of the 1, 2, and 3 residents of your 563 units?
Let's see here. Of what's under construction?
No, you have
Or-
5 properties that are coming online with 5,563 units.
Oh, the ones that are under construction. I did not keep that. Most of them are 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedroom units seems to be the hot commodity right now. There are some been on the project, like the one on State and what is it? 16th or whatever it is, that little. I don't know how they're gonna get more than studios in that building. This tiny 500 square foot studio, I don't know how they're gonna do it, because they got 102 units going in there.
Well, it is a 7-story building. too.
It is 7 stories, or how, it's 7?
Yeah.
But I think there's only 5 are dedicated to residences. The other 2 are parking.
I think you're right. Yeah. But still, it doesn't, I mean, I go out there and plot it. pretty
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, 20 units,
Just like itself.
I mean, you're talking about a third of an acre lot.
Parking.
Well, I'm just saying per floor. So if you're looking at a per floor basis and it's a third of an acre and it's filling the whole thing, that's 20 units per floor,
Yeah. That's- Yeah.
plus hallways, plus elevator, plus stairs, you know. I don't know how they're gonna do it. I do have one more thing I was gonna mention. Stacy was talking about properties on the market and whatnot. I'll send you the address. My neighbor is actually getting ready to list his house over in Eagle. It's a really nice little neighborhood. He is a custom home builder. So the home was built, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s. But he's done a ton of updates to it. It's a really nice house. It's about 1,500 square foot, 2-car garage. More of a patio style home. Has a very small yard, but it backs up to Orville Grayson Park, which is a small little community park. The lot itself is elevated a little bit. I wouldn't call it a view lot, but it's elevated a little bit because it's in the hills there in Eagle Ranch. So I'll send you the address on it. It has not hit the market yet. I think it's going to hit the market next week, I believe. And I think he's asking some around 500,000. So really nice house, great neighborhood. Any other questions?
Ron, did you tell us anything about vacancy in terms of like how absorption, what's your prediction in crystal ball saying?
We're still, the absorption rate is still pretty good, honestly. Vacancy obviously is higher on the new construction properties. And there's a project over on Records Way by Kleiner Park. It's the Bree apartment complex, if you're familiar with that. It's from Brighton, and it's a 55 and older project. They have super high vacancy in there because it's very, very high amenity, very high end. But they're asking a lot of money in rents there, and they've had a hard time getting it filled up. But that's probably the worst for vacancy that I've seen in the valley.
Okay,
A lot of other projects, they fill up pretty quick, honestly.
so you predicted, I think you said we've gone from nearly 0 to around 5 to 6%. You're using 5% for your market.
Yes.
And we've got all these units coming online. So are you predicting that it will increase? Or
I think it will, personally. I think vacancy will increase. I don't see, at least in the next year, that we're gonna have a huge influx in people moving. Possibly the year after that or following that, once my funds start to hire up and Meta is done and all the other, facilities are ramped up, I think then maybe, but not in the next year.
Mhm. And then also at that point, then the 2021, 2020 tidal wave of people will be
Yeah.
further away.
Yeah, and you've also got right now, there's a lot of multi-generational living happening where kids are still living with their parents, even though they're grown or out of college because they just can't afford to live anywhere else, and there's not a lot available for them. So as more apartments open up, new housing gets built. Just because all these are coming online doesn't mean we have to have 10,000 people moving here, because there's probably 10,000 kids living at home right now. So there's some cushion there.
Mhm. Yeah, we saw a lot of that in rentals during COVID, you know, some folks would just move out and move back with their parents, you know, if they were in hospitality.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
All right, well, let's
Thank
give a round of applause.
Oh, thank
All right, guys, let's, come on back up here. Donato and Ann, you don't have to, but you know. All right. Okay. Let's do a recap. We just got a ton of data, you guys. And oh, we have to stand like, what's gonna seem uncomfortably close. Come on over. There we go. All right. We just got a ton of data from Ada County assessors, appraisers, Donato and Ron DeRoost. And thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking to AVID Investors.
Thank you very much. Really.
Some of the key takeaways that I got, first off, is we just got hit with a ton of numbers, and I wrote them all down because you don't all have to know and understand every single thing they said. You've got a resource. You've got us at Swope Investment Properties. We'll use this data to price your properties. We'll use this data to help you understand whether you can make a legitimate appeal. And we'll be the first to tell you this looks right on market, or hey, I think you have a case, and we'll help with that. That's part of the services that we offer, just because we're in the industry. So if some of it was a lot, don't worry about it. Thank you for giving us a lot to work with here. Hopefully we can help you guys. Donato in residential told us that he's adjusting 0.25% up per month when he's looking at sales. So prices have been rising, and when we're looking at a comparable sales, we're seeing it having gone up 0.25% a month. The higher end sales have increased lately. There's a lot of cash in this valley. The cash sales have increased. So that's the amount of money people have, but also the fact that interest rates have really promoted using cash for purchases, of course. Rents have stabilized in both residential and commercial, they reported. In fact, in commercial, we've seen maybe 30% of the properties offering concessions when it comes to re-renting. And I think you said, Ron, there was in the previous 2 years, a 20 to 40% increase, was it, in rents?
Yep.
Wow. So that's, now we're stabilized. That can't last forever. The expenses you said were stabilized, which was surprising because it seems like things are still going up, but.
As a percentage of the overall income. So as the income goes up, expenses are gonna go up, but they're not going up a tremendous amount.
Okay. And then prices, we're seeing prices push down 5 to 6% or so. And even more so in the larger apartment complexes. The big question we've been asking is units. What do we have coming online? And if you add all of the units together, we had 1,318 units come on in 2023. And there's a lot more coming down the pipeline. We've got another 5,500 permitted in commercial and another 24,000 somewhere in the pipeline. Do we have the population growth to keep up with it? Well, it grew about 1%. And last year at 5669 in 2023, and that was the slowest. No. Yeah. And then our sales in 2023 were actually a lot slower. The slowest volume we'd seen in 8 years. As a real estate agent, I felt things really calmed down as well. So our sales were down, our population is growing, but not insanely. And then our vacancy, they're running around 5% for a vacancy rate these days. In some trends, we've got some multi-generational living to absorb in units. We've got, in terms of purchasing apartments, some of the builders aren't even letting go of them. They're keeping them. And as always, your assessment notices come out around the holidays, around Memorial Day. And so we need to appeal early. So holler right away if you think that yours is a miss. You want to call them early, appeal it informally first. Their goal is to be accurate within 10%. And I think you guys are really hitting that. We've definitely seen values. We used to like it because they were kind of low, you know.
Hear that all the time.
Yeah.
You guys are 20% below market all the time.
Right.
That's not the case anymore.
We missed
You
that.
should be so lucky. Yeah.
Other highlights?
All right.
Well, those are the highlights, guys. But holler if you need the deeper information. These guys are a huge resource for us. Again, thank you so much for being here. Round of applause.